Title: The Dark Truth About San Quentin, California's Deadliest Prison Revealed. Help this channel grow. Like the video, leave a comment, and subscribe for more stories. This helps us a lot. Thank you. The story begins. The first thing people notice about San Quentin is the silence. Not peace, but a heavy, unnatural stillness. A silence that feels like it's listening. The prison sits on the edge of the San Francisco Bay, its stone walls casting long shadows across the water. From a distance, it looks like an old fortress. Up close, it feels like a warning. For decades, San Quentin has been known as California's most infamous prison. Founded in 1852, it is the oldest correctional institution in the state, and age shows in every crack of its walls, every rusted bar, every echoing hallway where thousands of men have lived, fought, and died. Its nickname, the end of the line, was not earned by accident. On the first day inside, new inmates often say the prison closes around you like a fist. The gates don't just lock, they seal you into a world where time moves differently. Officers call the walk beyond the receiving room the Green Mile, because every step feels like you are walking deeper into something you can't escape. San Quentin houses minimum, medium, and maximum security inmates, but the heartbeat of the entire prison is East Block, home to California's largest and most notorious death row. Over 600 men await execution there. Some have been waiting for decades, their cases tangled in endless appeals and legal delays. Former guards say the atmosphere inside East Block feels thicker than the air outside, as if the weight of hundreds of unfinished lives hangs over everyone who walks those tiers. Daily life in San Quentin is ruled by an unspoken code. Racial lines, gang alliances, and survival instincts shape who you talk to, where you sit, and whether you make it through the day. A man can step into the yard and instantly know who controls each corner, not because guards explain it, but because the inmates do. The yard is divided like a map. One area controlled by the Serenos, another by the Norteños, the Black Guerrilla family on another side, white supremacist groups observing from the benches. One wrong step, one wrong look, can get a man stabbed before lunch. Former inmate and writer Eddie Ramirez once said, "San Quentin isn't a prison. It's a pressure cooker." Heat rises with overcrowding, frustration, and decades of unresolved violence. Cells meant for one man routinely hold two. Tempers flare. Nights bring arguments that echo through the cell blocks, doors rattling, fists hitting metal, men screaming for medical help that sometimes arrives too late. In the crowded tiers, it's not unusual for inmates to sleep with one shoe on, just in case they have to run in the dark. But the darkest truth isn't just the violence, it's the neglect hidden beneath the surface. Reports over the years have exposed severe understaffing, delayed medical care, and mental health crises that go untreated. A 2022 investigation revealed that inmates with schizophrenia or severe depression were left isolated for long periods, some harming themselves because no one checked on them in time. In a place already suffocating with tension, untreated illness becomes a slow, silent killer. And yet, San Quentin is full of contradictions. While violence brews in some corners, others are filled with small signs of humanity. The prison hosts one of the country's most well-known rehabilitative programs, including college courses, journalism workshops, and even a podcast that gained national attention. Men who once lived by the code of survival sit at tables learning to write, to speak, to hope again. But for many, hope isn't enough to survive the system. The execution chamber, a small, pale green room, remains one of the most haunting symbols of San Quentin. Though executions have been paused in California, the chamber still stands, unchanged, waiting. Former officers say walking past it in the early hours of the morning feels like passing through a ghost. They call it the room of final breaths. San Quentin doesn't just punish men. It keeps their stories trapped behind concrete and steel. The world sees the headlines, the crimes, the statistics. But inside those walls are untold histories, hidden moments of fear and desperation, and secrets that reveal how broken the system truly is. And as the sun rises over the bay, lighting the prison yard with a cold orange glow, another day begins. Another day of survival. Another day inside California's deadliest prison, where truth is as dangerous as the men who live there. The heart of the danger lies in the cell tiers, long, narrow corridors stacked 3 or 4 levels high, each lined with metal-barred cells barely big enough for a twin bed and a toilet. When the morning count ends, the blocks erupt into noise, shouts echoing off concrete, radios playing competing stations, officers yelling orders that often go ignored. But beneath the noise is something more unsettling. A constant tension so thick you can feel it before you understand it. Every inmate learns quickly that San Quentin operates under an invisible but iron rule. You must belong to someone, or you belong to no one. And belonging to no one is the most dangerous position of all. In these cell blocks, gangs are not just groups, they are governments. They enforce laws, settle disputes, and control movement far more effectively than officers can. The Mexican Mafia, the Aryan Brotherhood, the Black Guerrilla Family, the Norteños, and the Serenos control everything from who cleans the tiers to which inmate gets a bottom bunk. A man who enters the wrong conversation or steps into the wrong shower stall can spark a conflict that ends in blood. Officers try to intervene, but San Quentin's overcrowding forces many sections to operate with minimal supervision. Some tiers go 15 to 20 minutes at a time without an officer physically present, giving gangs the space they need to enforce their own rules. Violence here does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it begins with a quiet whisper, a warning that someone is green-lit, meaning approved for attack. Other times, it arrives in the form of a sharpened piece of metal slid under a cell door. Officers call these weapons shanks. Inmates call them insurance. Still, the most feared place in San Quentin isn't the general population. It's East Block, the home of death row. Here, the cells are smaller, the air colder, and the silence even heavier. Men spend up to 23 hours per day behind bars, most having lived that way for decades. Some inmates have outlived their families. Others have lost their minds, whispering to themselves through the night, unable to tell whether they are still alive or dreaming. One former officer described East Block in 3 words: a warehouse of ghosts. What makes it worse is the knowledge that many men here die not by execution, but by neglect. Years of underfunding and staff shortages have stretched the medical unit thin. Some inmates wait weeks or months for treatment. Minor infections turn into major emergencies. Heart problems go unnoticed until it's too late. A 2021 report revealed that San Quentin's medical department had one of the highest preventable death rates in the state prison system. But the true collapse came during the COVID-19 outbreak, when a transfer decision sent infected inmates into San Quentin without proper quarantine. The virus spread like wildfire in the overcrowded tiers. More than 2,000 inmates, over 2/3 of the prison population, became infected. Dozens died. The outbreak was described as the worst public health disaster in California prison history. Inside the cell blocks, men watched their neighbors cough until they collapsed. Some screamed for help that never came. Others pounded on their doors, begging for medical care, only to be told to wait their turn. Inmates said it felt like the prison was drowning, and no one outside cared enough to save them. For those who survived, the experience left scars that no rehabilitation program can erase. Still, life inside San Quentin is not only defined by violence and decay. There are moments, rare, fragile, where humanity breaks through. In the education wing, men gather for college classes discussing literature, history, and the future most of them will never experience outside these walls. In the chapel, inmates sing hymns or sit quietly, hoping for a peace that the cell blocks deny them. In the journalism program, men write about the prison's failures and their own regrets, sending stories beyond the walls to readers who never imagined such realities. These programs offer a glimpse of what San Quentin could be, a place of redemption instead of despair, but the weight of its history and the brutality of its environment often overshadow the attempts at change. At the end of every day, when the final count echoes through the tiers and the cells slam shut with a metallic crack, men lie awake staring at the ceiling, listening to distant shouts, the rattle of chains, or the quiet sobs of someone losing hope. They think about the families who no longer visit, the friends who didn't survive, and the dreams they left behind the moment they stepped into this fortress. San Quentin is more than just a prison. It is a world within a world, one that shapes men, breaks men, and sometimes buries them. By the time a man reaches his final years inside San Quentin, he begins to understand something that outsiders rarely see. This prison doesn't just punish crimes, it punishes time itself. Every hallway, every yard, every cell carries the weight of stories that were never officially recorded. Chapter 3 dives into these hidden truths, the ones whispered between inmates, documented in forgotten reports, or buried behind institutional silence. For decades, San Quentin has been described as a paradox, a place where rehabilitation programs earn national praise, yet where some of the most brutal, preventable deaths have occurred. The truth lies in the contrast. On one side of the prison, men graduate from college courses taught by volunteers. On the other, men bleed out in their cells from stabbings that could have been prevented. The Violence Reduction Committee calls this the San Quentin duality, two realities living under the same roof, one hopeful, one horrifying. Nowhere is that duality clearer than in the adjustment center, a high-security wing notorious for isolation, mental deterioration, and violent confrontations. Former officers have admitted that the adjustment center was often used for more than punishment. It was used to break people. Inmates have reported days without outdoor access, nights of screaming echoing through the halls, and a constant feeling of being watched. One former inmate described it as a place where time doesn't move. You count minutes by listening to someone lose their mind. And then there is the story of William Tyree, a mentally ill inmate who died in 2016. He repeatedly begged for help after complaining of chest pain. Surveillance footage later revealed he was left alone, gasping for air for hours. By the time officers checked on him, he was already dead. The coroner ruled it natural causes, but his family believed the truth was neglect. His case was not isolated. Multiple lawsuits alleged that San Quentin repeatedly failed to protect inmates with mental health issues. Men who needed treatment were placed in solitary. Some stopped eating. Some harmed themselves. A few never made it out alive. Yet, despite all this, San Quentin continues to hold programs that journalists describe as miracles inside a nightmare. One of these is the San Quentin News, a newspaper run entirely by inmates. Its writers interview wardens, examine prison policy, and publish stories that challenge the system from within. But even they face limits. Some stories can't be printed, some interviews can't be approved, and some truths can't be spoken without consequences. Behind the newsroom is the lower yard, a place where men walk in small circles, lost in thought, trying to escape the noise inside their heads. But even the yard holds its own secrets. In 2018, a fight erupted near the tables by the baseball field. It started as a disagreement between two inmates over a gambling debt. Within minutes, 3 more joined, then 5. Officers fired warning rounds, and a man collapsed on the ground after being stabbed in the ribs with a metal shank fashioned from a bed frame. He survived, but barely. That stabbing was one of dozens that year. Still, violence is only one shadow that hangs over San Quentin. The COVID-19 outbreak remains its darkest chapter. When the virus swept in, inmates watched neighbors fall sick one by one, coughing violently, begging for help. Some guards tried their best, but the outbreak overwhelmed the prison. Men who had spent decades surviving riots, lockdowns, and gang wars were suddenly terrified of an invisible enemy. One inmate wrote in a letter, "We weren't afraid of dying in prison. We were afraid of dying forgotten." Dozens did. After the outbreak, the state admitted it had mishandled the situation, a rare moment of transparency. But apologies did nothing for the families who received ashes instead of phone calls. For the survivors, the shadows of that summer still cling to them. Yet, even after everything, San Quentin remains a symbol in America's criminal justice system. A symbol of failure, yes, but also a symbol of possibility. A symbol of what happens when a system tries to rehabilitate and punish at the same time, and ends up doing both with devastating consequences. The men who live here say the same thing. San Quentin is not haunted because of ghosts, it is haunted because of memories. Memories of executions once carried out in the same building where men now gather for rehabilitation classes. Memories of inmates who fought every day to change but were swallowed by violence or neglect. Memories of officers who tried to help but were trapped by understaffing and politics. Memories of moments where hope flickered, only to be crushed by the weight of institutional failure. As night falls over the bay, the lights of San Quentin flicker against the cold water. The prison looks calm, almost peaceful from a distance. But the truth lives inside the walls, in the stories that were never recorded, in the pain that never made it into official reports, and in the voices of those who survived long enough to tell what really happened. Because San Quentin is more than California's oldest prison. It is California's most complicated wound, one the system has tried to cover, ignore, and heal all at the same time. And the darkest truth? Some wounds never fully heal. They just get quieter.